Welcome, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for an overview of marijuana legalization in New Jersey. My name is Kathy Chern, and I am a consumer health librarian at East Brunswick Public Library. Today's program is brought to you by the Wellspring Center for Prevention and the Libraries Just for the Health of It initiative to promote community health and wellness. Our speaker today is Mara Carlin, coordinator of coalition and community programs at Wellspring Center for Prevention. Please be aware that this talk is being recorded. Please keep your microphones muted and your webcams off. The recording will be available at ebpl.org/YouTube. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box. Our speaker will answer questions at the end of the talk. And without further ado, I'll turn things over to Mara.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. It's nice to see some familiar faces, familiar names, and some new names as well. Again, I'm Mara Carlin. I coordinate the Coalition for Healthy Communities throughout Wellspring Center for Prevention, and I also manage a lot of our community grants. I've been in the prevention field for almost 20 years. I know I don't look it, but I started out doing a lot of work around tobacco advocacy and policy, and we've come a really, really long way. Now we're kind of working through the new marijuana legalization and policies. And I just before we get started, I just want to throw it out there that this is ever changing. And the legislation is so brand new. So some of the stuff that we're going to talk about is true for today, but tomorrow it can change. And there's a lot of new bills being introduced into both the Senate and the Assembly. And all these things are ever changing and ever evolving. So I'm going to talk today about how we got here, where we are now, what we can look for in the future, some lessons learned from some of the other states that have already legalized recreational marijuana. And then we're going to kind of sum it up with some of the concerns that I see as someone who really advocates for reducing youth substance use in our communities, because that's really, really what my passion is. And what I see in the future is really the detriment that our kids are going to possibly have from this legislation. But, how did we get here? So in 2010, medical marijuana became available in New Jersey with some of the strictest laws in the country. And if you remember back then, they also decriminalized having a small amount of recreational marijuana. In 2016 and 17, bills introduced to legalize recreational marijuana. In 2017, Governor Murphy ran for governor with the promise of legalizing recreational marijuana in his first 100 days. That didn't happen. And then in 2017, medical marijuana laws were reviewed with recommendations to relax current regulations. The bill was approved by the budget and then went for a full House vote and eventually did not pass. On the 2020 ballot, the question was proposed whether or not to recreationally legalize marijuana for anyone 21 and older, and that bill did pass. So a lot of people thought, well, once the bill passed, marijuana was going to be legalized in New Jersey, and here we go. But that's just not the way that it worked. So just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the governor signed into legislation the ability to have recreational marijuana in New Jersey. So here's some of the things that we know that are going to happen or have happened so far. So New Jersey was or is the 13th state to legalize recreational marijuana. Every single state has different rules and regulations. The first one was Colorado. There were some lessons learned from Colorado that we're bringing over here to New Jersey. So, it was good that we weren't the first state because we can actually learn from what happened in other states as well. Also, right now, it's still federally illegal. There are bills in both the House and the Senate to legalize marijuana as a whole in the United States. With a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic president. I foresee that happening, but right now, as of today, it is still illegal in New Jersey. It's still Schedule I drug in New Jersey. If you are 21 and older, right now in New Jersey, you can possess up to 6 ounces. There are still restrictions on where you can consume marijuana. The restrictions are very, very similar to alcohol restrictions. So in parks, in public places, you're not allowed to consume. The places, the dispensaries that open, a lot of them will have consumption sites, indoor and outdoor. So that you'll see those rules and regulations come down. Right now, the only dispensaries that are open are medical marijuana dispensaries. There are 12 in the state. Once we start opening up some recreational dispensaries, they're going to be up to 37 cultivators, not just 37 stores, but 37 cultivators. So including those 12. So there's only, a few left, a few licenses left to be had, but there will be stores in a lot of the municipalities where we live and where we work. Law enforcement right now cannot use the smell of marijuana to conduct a search except for suspected DUI. Prosecutions must end right now. Actually, that was done a while ago for low-level arrests under 6 ounces. This I have an asterisk because this is, as a parent and as somebody in the prevention field, this is what's so concerning to me. And I know right now there are bills in both the Assembly and the Senate, and I think the governor is kind of on board to change these a little bit. But right now, marijuana is decriminalized. And it's actually true for marijuana and alcohol too, for anyone under 21, meaning that right now, if a kid under 21 gets caught using alcohol or marijuana, they're not going to get arrested. Of course, we don't want kids to get arrested. Great thing. But also parents right now are not going to be notified. It's kind of going to be some kind of warning, but there's really there's no checks or balances. It's not like there's a system where, a law enforcement officer could be like, all right, well, I stopped, Mara Carlin. She was under 21. It was her first warning. The next one, we're going to notify their parents. There's nothing like that yet. And so right now, as the bill lays and what Governor Murphy signed, if a person under 21, 15, 14, 13, doesn't matter. It's not like 18 to 21. They're not going to notify your parents. So there's like that gray area right over there. Municipalities right now have 180 days to opt out of whether or not they want to have dispensaries in their town. And there's lots of things that municipalities have to decide, not just dispensaries, but cultivation places, consumption areas. So there's lots of decisions that municipalities are going to have to make in the next 180 days from when the governor signed the legislation. So there's a lot of thinking that municipalities have to do. And right now, as it stands, but again, could change because there were bills introduced as soon as the law was signed. Right now in New Jersey for recreational marijuana, you are not allowed to home grow. So that's where the bill stands right now. Those are the big things. Of course, the bill was really long. If you want to get into more detail, I'm kind of just giving you an overview of what's, what kind of stuck out to me, what's important, and where we are. How are we different from other states? Believe it or not, we live in New Jersey. We're usually really high taxed, but New Jersey has one of the lowest effective tax rates on marijuana in the country, which is really surprising. But again, could change. Dispensaries can open consumption areas. Most of the other legalized recreational states do not have consumption areas. So if you think about what a consumption area would be, it would be kind of like a bar, right? So you can buy, and then there'll be an area where you can consume. We are the 4th state that's going to have legal marijuana delivery services. And so when I was talking a little bit before about municipalities deciding whether or not they're going to allow dispensaries or allow other cultivation areas, one of the things that they're not allowed to actually ban is the delivery services. So let's say East Brunswick, for example, says, you know what, I think we're going to opt out. We're not going to have dispensaries. They can't then say, and you also can't get delivery services. So delivery services are going to be available everywhere. 25% or even more of licenses to businesses owned by women, minorities, or veterans, and small businesses would be at least 10% of the industry, which is really good news when you're thinking about youth use, because a lot of times with these big corporations that come in for with cannabis sales and to sell cannabis, a lot of it is geared towards our youth. So small businesses, we have a better chance of not using all those tactics like big tobacco has used to really get our youth to use these products. So is it legal? I talked a little bit before about this. Right now in the United States, it is federally illegal. It's a Scheduled I controlled substance. Of course, there are a bunch of states that for years, right? New Jersey, it's been almost 11 years or 11 years that have legalized medicinal marijuana, but also recreational marijuana as well. It's concerning only for money purposes, because right now, a lot of federal banks are not allowed to accept any accounts from any of the dispensaries. So a lot of the business is cash business, or it has to be like a state bank or a credit union that will accept either credit cards or deposits from the dispensaries as well. So you can see here on the map where we are. What a lot of states in the West have already legalized recreational marijuana. Us in the East, we're kind of catching up a little bit. You could see that Washington, D.C. also, you can see this little circle right there is Washington, D.C. has also legalized recreational marijuana. Although in D.C. right now, there are no dispensaries, it's just decriminalized. So if you have less than 2 ounces, you cannot get arrested. So what are some of the pros? Okay, so there's pros and there's cons to everything. One of them, of course, is a revenue boost. We know from other states that have legalized recreational marijuana that there has been a lot of tax collected and a lot of tax used, especially for schools and other things like that. In New Jersey right now, there's not really a clear path on what exactly that revenue is going to be used for. We have a lot of debt in New Jersey. It might be used for that. As a prevention person, I'm hoping that some of it will go to prevention and treatment. Nothing is written there yet, but hopefully that will come about. Criminal justice reform, safety controls, right? Because black market marijuana has been cut or does get cut with lots of things. It comes from other places. It changes hands a lot. So at least if somebody is buying something from a dispensary, you know that there are safety controls. Expansion of medicinal use. Right now, because it's a Scheduled I drug across the country, there's not a lot of research allowed to be done. There's only 2 universities that are allowed to do any research on marijuana, and the THC levels in the ones they're using are very, very low compared to the marijuana that's out there now in legalized states and on the black market as well. So hopefully if that changes, then they'll be able to do a lot of research, because we do know that cannabis has some medicinal benefits as well. And then of course, less stigma. When you're talking about any substance use disorder, there's so much stigma around substance use disorders that if things are decriminalized or things are legalized, there'll be less stigma. And if somebody needs help, they're more apt to ask for help. So where are we, right? So in New Jersey, I talked about the low tax rate. Right now, it's going to be taxed at our normal tax rate of 6.625%. Municipalities could also add on a 2% tax. And again, just like there's no regulations right now about where that tax money could go state level, there's really nothing municipality level either. I'm sure that's coming, but right now there's really nothing there. Estimates that this marijuana tax will increase the state budget by about 3% or $300 million. And if we look at other states that have legalized, it's just about that much in those other states too. It increases year after year. It starts out about 3% of that budget. So what's great about criminal justice reform? It reduces a lot of costs, right? So you look at the amount of people that have been arrested for low-level marijuana crimes, for lack of better words, there's just a lot of money lost there. Expungements, many people have on their record marijuana arrests. Those are going to be expunged. And then our current laws, the way that they were written, were really disproportionately targeted at people of color and people from low socioeconomic areas. And as part of when I'm looking at where dispensaries are in other states that have legalized recreational marijuana, I see that disproportionately as well. Safety controls, I alluded to this a little bit before, but at least we'll have an understanding of what exactly is in the products, and there won't necessarily be cut with so many of the other the other things that we see in black market. Doesn't necessarily mean the black market is going to go away, because regulated marijuana costs it costs more money than black market marijuana, but it will be there, and it will at least be safer. In states like Colorado, what they have done with edibles, and we'll talk about that in just a little while, is they made edibles have to be in a particular package that have THC on them, because some of them are candy, some of them are sweet tasting. The drinks before looked like, different sodas that people would use, and they kind of look the same as other products. So in Colorado right now, they're not allowed to have packaging that is similar to packaging like Nerds Rope or Sour Patch Kids or things like that. So hopefully New Jersey will follow suit. Nothing right now is on the books. I'm just hoping that will follow suits. So what are some of the concerns, right? Commercialization, youth use, and addiction. I think that, I do a lot of work with youth, and I get this question all the time, or the statement all the time that marijuana is not addictive, and that's just not true. Is it as addictive as other substances? Will you go into withdrawal like you would using opiates or heroin? Of course not. But you'll see in a little while how with youth, the #1 drug that youth go to treatment for is marijuana. The black market's not going to go away. There also is an environmental impact, and then of course some health risks as well. So there's big tobacco 2.0 is very similar to big marijuana. And I'm happy that in New Jersey, we're at least leaving a portion of the industry to small businesses. So it's not just these big corporations who are coming in and selling this product, because that seems to be where the youth target is. And I was talking before about the commercialization, or how products look like other products, and that's particularly true with edibles. Right now in New Jersey, the dispensaries that sell medicinal marijuana do not sell these type of edible products. I think they sell lozenges, they sell some creams, they sell some oils. But once the dispensaries open for recreational marijuana, there will be these edible products. And as a parent, if it's in your house, you have to take extra precaution, because a lot of them are sweet. A lot of them look like or taste like other candy. So, you have to be careful. And the amount of marijuana that is in edibles is also a lot more than in flower. So there is a difference, right? It's called marijuana, it's called cannabis, but edibles are really, really different. You can poison yourself, especially young kids when they're out and about. But with edibles, it often takes longer for you to feel the effects than traditionally smoking marijuana or vaping oils. So what happens a lot of times is people take a portion, don't feel anything for, 30, 40 minutes, take more to feel the effects, and then it kind of hits them all at once. So it does take longer to feel the effects, and also serving size comes into play with edibles as well. So, when I think about a Hershey bar, or I think about a cookie, when I'm going to eat a cookie, I'm eating a whole cookie, right? I'm not looking at the serving size. It is what it is. But with edibles, most of the time, the serving size, when they're sold in stores, the serving size is on them. A lot of times it's 1/10, 1/5, right? Who's looking to eat 1/5 of a cookie if you're not really sure? With the Hershey bars, it's broken up usually into 10. Your serving size is one of those pieces. But again, if you're not looking, or you're not aware of it, and you eat the whole thing, you're getting a dose, it should be up 100 milligrams, you're getting 10 times that amount. And like I said before too, a lot of these products look like other products. And in Colorado, what they did is they said, you know what, we're not going to let these companies make the products look like other products anymore. We're going to have special packaging that specifically has THC on it, because of youth getting to it, or kids getting to it. I have a 4th grader, and if I had something in my house that looked like a lollipop, he would eat the lollipop. He would eat it. If it wasn't stored away properly, or it didn't have different packaging on it, kids can get to it, and they're seeing that in other states as well. What are some of the health risks? There are some benefits, we know, medicinal benefits to cannabis and to marijuana. There are also some health risks as well. So, learning and memory can be impaired, specifically for the developing brain, right? So our brains are not fully developed until we're about 25. Some research now says closer to 30. So if a young person under the age of, 21 is that magic number, but, any teenager or young adult that is using cannabis on a regular basis, it's going to affect their learning and their memory. Of course, your coordination and your judgment is impaired, just like any other substance that you're using. That's why, there's that, question about DUIs and how much can you have before you can drive or before you get a DUI. Reduce school performance for young people. We see, of course, I'm not talking about, using one time in their life or 2 times, but continuously using marijuana. We see reduced school satisfaction, reduced life satisfaction as well over time, not, of course, recreationally using once in a while, but over time, these could be some health risks. Impaired driving, concentration and alertness, and smoking, not using edibles, but smoking and vaping could cause respiratory problems as well. What are some of the impacts that Colorado specifically has seen? I've worked really closely in the past with the people from the Rocky Mountain high intensity drug trafficking area in Colorado. When we were talking about legalizing recreational marijuana in New Jersey, we wanted to kind of see the whole impact. And actually our state senators took a trip over to Colorado to talk to them to see, what they're seeing, what's happening, how they can make things better over here in New Jersey. And some of the things that they found was that marijuana traffic related deaths have increased dramatically overall when you look at just Colorado traffic related deaths since they legalized recreational marijuana. So you can just see how much it has increased. And again, thinking about New Jersey, what can we do differently? And we have a lot of DREs who are on the road to make sure that people are driving safe. But right now, and there's some in production, but right now there's nothing equivalent to like a breathalyzer. So marijuana stays in your system for a really long time. When somebody's driving under the influence or somebody gets into a car accident and they take their blood or they swab them, there's no way to actually tell how much is in your system like right now or when the last time that you used marijuana. And hopefully that's coming. That science, I think, is on the forefront, but it's not here yet. So sometimes people have used marijuana 5, 6, 7 days before, but when they're drug tested, it pops up positive for THC and they can get a DUI, even though they weren't necessarily under the influence this minute. And I think with the consumption areas similar to that of bars, we need to make sure that we're able to regulate that to make sure that our roads are safe. The yearly rate of marijuana hospitalizations also increased. I work with some doctors in the ER at Robert Wood. They're on my coalition, and for a very, very long time, we didn't see any marijuana hospitalizations at all in the ER in Robert Wood. In the past few years, they started to see some, mostly from Rutgers, but started to see some as the medical marijuana expanded. Just looking at Colorado and thinking about edibles and, people not being used to using it, we might start to see also in New Jersey an uptick, but you can see on the slides here what Colorado has been seeing. And, again, youth use, that's my really, my passion. Adults are adults, right? Like we make our decisions, but I think when it comes to things with our youth, they're really influenced by what they see in the media, specifically social media, their TikToks, their Instagram, and the idea that recreational marijuana has been legalized in New Jersey gives our youth this idea that it can't be harmful to them. If something is legal, how can it be harmful? And that's just, that their brain development, that's just how kids think. If you have kids, if you work with kids, because I get this question every single time I'm doing a youth presentation. So Colorado past month marijuana use for age 12 and older is ranked third in the nation. And it's a lot higher than the national average. In New Jersey, we're right about the national average right now. So it will be interesting to see what happens in the next few years, but we always hover right around the national average, according to the Monitoring the Future survey. So some violent crime also has increased since legalization has happened. And 65%, I think that number might be a little more this year, of local municipalities have bans recreational and medical marijuana businesses. So, where are most of the dispensaries located? And if you could see the map over here, I know it's kind of small, but, think about alcohol outlets, right? And the towns where there are more alcohol outlets per capita or per density of the municipality. And a lot of times it's in the inner cities. So, we have to be careful about where the dispensaries are going to go, how close they are to schools, how close they are to bus stops and things like that. So when you look at Colorado, and personally, I've never been to Colorado, but I know I have colleagues who have been there and say there are some, it's like a desert in some places where they don't sell them at all. And then there's other places where you can walk down the street and there's 3 or 4 or 5 dispensaries right in a row. So again, something to think about when we're thinking about the municipalities that are going to allow it or not allow it. And I know there was a question, Kathy told me there was a question about workplace and in New Jersey. And so in New Jersey right now, the law is kind of, it's kind of a little confusing. And I think that there's some legislation that's going to happen to kind of clear it up. But my understanding right now is that businesses can regulate if they think that somebody came to work under the influence or they're using during the day. But if they're using it, on the weekends, I don't think, kind of like alcohol, that you really could, that they're really going to be able to regulate in that way. There are some industries though, where they're going to be able to drug test for marijuana. And they are going to be able to regulate whether or not you use it on the weekends, such as law enforcement, firefighters, I think trucking, if you drive a school bus and things like that. But I still think that they're just trying to work that out. So I hope that I answered your question. That was there was 2 questions. And here are just some positive workplace marijuana tests, how they've increased. You can see from when medicinal marijuana became legalized in Colorado until now, how it has increased. So you can see just the increase. And again, it just makes sense. If something is recreational legalized, it's more available. People are going to do it. It's more acceptable, so there's obviously going to be a higher rate of people using it. I think that just makes sense. So what's some impacts in New Jersey that we're seeing? This is something that stood out to me. Again, my youth passion is that almost 90% of treatment admissions for anyone 0 to 24 were for marijuana. So most of the treatment admissions we see for youth is youth who are having trouble with marijuana. Statewide, and this is including adults and youth, marijuana makes up 14%. So the majority of people who are having issue with marijuana that are going to treatment are our youth. In Middlesex County, in 2018, almost 400 youth from 12 to 24 were admitted to treatment for marijuana disorder. It was the highest among any other substance. Again, 24.3% increase in students grades 6 to 12 who thought it was not wrong at all for their friends to use marijuana. So the perception of harm of marijuana is really, really low. So, we can see how the perception has changed, right? So in between 2014 and 2018, it was 24%. And now it's about 41%. So what are our youth telling us? We do a pride survey at Wellspring every 2 years. And a lot of the questions that we ask are about substance use, perceptions, behaviors. And what we found since we've been doing it for the past 12 years is there's been a lowered perception of harm gradually over the last couple of years. And I think that comes a lot from other states recreationally legalizing marijuana. so much of our media, of our music, of our TV shows all, talk a lot about marijuana. It's become more accessible and acceptable to them. And there are a lot higher rates of use among our youth. And we see that through the trends throughout the years. So again, my passion is youth. My passion is, really making sure that our youth are safe. Adult use is one thing, but I think when it comes to youth, we have to be really, really careful and, what our laws are saying, where we're selling it, what some of the rules and regulations are.
Right, so thank you, Mara, for taking the time to present on this topic and also for answering all of our questions. And also thank you for everyone who attended and for joining us for today's talk. So I just want to wish you well and take care and stay safe. Thank you.